Hi, my name is Kaylin.
And I'm Travis, and we're interviewing Sidney Sheppard.
I am from Tawnytown.
I am too from Tontown,
Oh, Northwest Middle.
Northwest Middle School.
Hi, Jonas.
Um, when like how how did you feel to be at Robert Moton?
One of the highlights of my life, I think, was when I was able to finally go to Robert Moton High School. I started Robert Moton High School as a student in 1935. Going to high school for me was something important. A lot of people in the community I grew up with considered themselves having finished school when they graduated from elementary school. And at that time, elementary school were grades 1 through 7. And so to go to high school was made you a special person in my community. I grew up in a little community in southern part of Carroll County called White Rock, which was about 3 miles from Sykesville. Uh, you guys live in Tonytown. I had never heard of Tonytown. That was, as far as I was concerned, on the other side of the world. Uh, at that time, Tonytown, whether you know it or not, was the second largest incorporated town in Carroll County. Westminster was the largest, but Tonytown was a long ways from Sykesville.
Okay, can you tell us about the history of Robert Moton?
You're talking about Robert Moton High School that was on Church Street. Uh, there was a high school in Westminster on Union Street. I think it was called Westminster Colored High School or Carroll County Colored High School or something. And there was no transportation to that school. The people who did not live in Westminster, for example, my family was 20 some miles from Westminster. If the people from my community who wanted to go to high school had to find somebody on Union Street in Westminster and pay room and board to stay with them to go to high school.
Did you stay with anybody or like pay somebody to stay with somebody?
I didn't. I wasn't old enough at that time, but I had an older sister who went to high school, and my father had to pay room and board for her to board with someone in Westminster. Now, when the high school moved on Church Street, the first Robert Moton High School, there was no transportation. The first principal of Robert Moton High School was George Crawford, and George Crawford made it one of his most important things he wanted to do was to get a bus so the children from Sykesville, Mount Airy, Winfield could ride to school. And the first students who rode that bus had to pay 10 cents a day to ride the bus. Mr. Crawford had to buy the bus himself. So he raised money to put a down payment on the bus. The superintendent of schools apparently wasn't in favor of him doing that. So the superintendent told him, if you miss a payment, you lose your job.
What would 10 cents be worth today?
Oh, Lord, 10 cents be worth today? Well, I don't know, but it would be 10 cents then was a lot more money than it is now. Carroll County was a farming community, and one of the jobs that people had in Carroll County was working on the farm, and a lot of times a good farm wage was $1 a day. So that gives you an idea. For my brother to get 10 cents to go to high school, there was a farm he worked on. That when he got off the bus, he walked to that farm and fed the livestock. he got his dinner and 10 cents for doing that. So that gave him 10 cents that he needed to ride the bus every day.
What was like the bus ride like?
Well, the bus that I had in 1930, this was around 33, 32, wasn't like the buses you have today. They didn't have air conditioning. Air conditioning hadn't been invented. The bus that the students rode on didn't have heat either. Heat had been invented, but that bus didn't have any heat. It was a used bus, so some days it broke down and didn't get to school, or some of the kids didn't get to school all day long because the bus broke down. The driver of the bus didn't live in Carroll County. The driver of the bus lived in Howard County in a little town called Cooksville, which is 97 and 40, where 97 and 40 is intersection. So he drove the bus from Cooksville to Mount Airy, to Taylorsville, to Eldersburg, to Westminster. And he drove it for free. He didn't get paid for driving the bus. He was also a teacher. He taught all day. And then in the after school closed, he drove the bus back. In order to make money to help to pay for the bus, sometime the school had programs at night. That same bus driver drove the bus back to Westminster at night. Same kids who rode that bus during the day to school, if they wanted to go to the program, they had to pay another 10 cents to get to Westminster for the program.
When did the old Robert Moton High School start out?
1930.
When did it close?
When did they build this school? I don't know, 47? I don't know when this school.
Okay, go ahead.
Why did they build the new high school?
When did they build the new high school? That's what I was saying. I don't know. It was after World War II.
Why did they
1950.
Oh.
I understand it was built in 1950. That was after World War II. Go ahead.
Okay, why did they build it though?
Well, because they needed a new high school. The old Robert Moton High School was an old building. It didn't have indoor plumbing. Its heating system was lacking. It didn't operate too well. And they didn't have the facilities that they needed. So, plus they needed more room.
Did it make you feel good when they built the new high school?
Yeah, it made me feel good to know that there was a new high school in my county. Of course, I wasn't living in Carroll County that time. I was living someplace else, working someplace else.
What did you do at Robert Moton High School?
But you mean when I came back I came back to this building, I came back as a teacher. I came back, my job, I taught 8th grade core, boys physical education. Core was an experiment in education that the state of Maryland had entered to around 1947, 48, where instead of teaching history, English, arithmetic, and science separately, you had a group put a group of them together. Carroll County had an English and social studies core. So the core teacher taught English and social studies. You took an area of interest and talked about that area of interest. And in doing that, you got all of the English that an 8th grader or a 7th grader might need to know. And you got social studies that an 8th or 7th grader might need to know.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Did you like teaching at the new Robert Moton High School?
Yes, I did. I enjoyed it. Teaching at Robert Moton was one of my most pleasant professional experiences. It was also the most demanding. I lived in Baltimore City at the time, and my day started at 7:30 in the morning when I got in my car to get ready to come to Westminster. I was coaching boys basketball. Basketball season, I might get back home at 2 o'clock the next morning. At that time, Robert Moton did not play the high schools in Carroll County. So we had to get a schedule by going outside of Carroll County. The nearest school that I played to Robert Moton was probably Tubman in Howard County or Banneker in Baltimore County. But we also played at Lincoln in Frederick County, North Street in Hagerstown, Central Consolidated in Bel Air, Habit Race Consolidated in Habit Race, Carver in Baltimore.
Were these other segregated schools that you were playing against?
We were playing segregated schools. All of them was, yes. This was before integration. I was able to play the only school, my first year at Robert Moton, the only school I played other than the black schools was St. John's Catholic School. Later on over the years, I was able to add a school in Carroll County as they were able to fit me in their schedule.
Okay. How did you feel about playing with like other segregated schools?
That was a way of life. So it was what I'd been doing all my life. That's why I went to Robert Moton High School. I told you I grew up in a little community near Sykesville called White Rock. I had to walk from my house out White Rock Road to Liberty Road 32, which was 3 miles, to catch a school bus to ride to Westminster. Had I walked 3 miles in the other direction, I would have been at the White High School in Sykesville.
We saw a lot of trophies in the hallway here. How many did you win?
I don't know those trophies that somebody else won. I don't think I won any of them. I don't think we got any of those trophies. They weren't passing out trophies.
Did you think you did good though, like as a coach?
Beg your pardon?
Do you think you did good as a coach?
I think I did. Now, I don't know if anybody else thought I did. I thought I was doing, we had a good team and we were competitive. Robert Moton was one of the smallest high schools in the state of Maryland. Every school that we played was larger than we were, had more students, which meant they had an opportunity to get better players. But we were competitive and we had some rewarding wins. We went up to Frederick and played Lincoln High School, and we came away winning. We beat Lincoln High School. For Robert Moton to beat Lincoln High School in Frederick would be just like McDaniel College beating the University of Maryland College Park. There was that much difference in the programs or the size of the schools. When I went to college, the basketball team in college had 3 boys from Frederick played on the team, and their senior year in Frederick High School had won the state championship. And when I finished high school, Robert Moton didn't have a physical education program. We didn't have a basketball team.
Okay, what other sports did your school play?
We played softball. We played soccer. We had cross country, and of course we had track. The only high school in Carroll County that had football was Westminster High School. the only black high school in the state of Maryland outside of the schools in Baltimore City that had football was Bates High School in Annapolis. So football wasn't a big thing in the black high schools in the state of Maryland at that time.
Okay.
Did you have any like rivals or teams you liked to play against?
Well, I like to play against them all. There were some teams that I enjoyed beating more than you did others. Those are the rivals. I had a good friend who was coach at Havre de Grace Consolidated, so I took pleasure in beating him when we went up to Havre de Grace. I had worked at Robert Moton High School in Easton, Maryland, before I came here. Easton had one of the best basketball teams for black high schools that size in the state of Maryland, outside of Baltimore City. They came, the coach invited me to bring my team to Easton. They opened their new school and they had a new gymnasium, so we played the first game in their new gymnasium, and they blew us out. They beat us terrible. Well, Robert Moton High School in Easton had won the state championship for several years. So that same year, we invited them to a return game. We played on a home and home basis, and we beat them at Robert Moton. So that was one of the greatest wins, and we beat them in sudden death overtime. I don't know if you know much about the rules of basketball, but if the basketball doesn't end in a tie, so if at the end of the playing time, the score is tied, you have a 5-minute overtime. At the end of the 5-minute overtime, if it's still tied, you have another 5-minute overtime. At the end of the second 5-minute overtime, if it's still tied, you have a 3-minute overtime. And we did that. And at the end of the 3-minute overtime, it was still tied. So then the referee said we play sudden death. The first team that gets 2 points ahead will win. And at the second 3-minute, at the sudden death overtime, at the end of that 3 minutes, we were leading by 1 point, so we were declared the winners. So that was my biggest win. Now the Robert Moton High School in Easton was had 3 times the number of students that Robert Moton High School in Westminster had. And that team that we beat went on to win the state championship for the next 4 or 5 years. So that was one of my biggest wins. Plus the coach was a good friend of mine.
Like, how much did it cost to travel to each high school?
I've forgotten. I can only remember the first trip I took. It cost us $40 for the bus. We went to Central Consolidated in Bel Air, and that was a school bus. But later on, and I forget the name of the bus, but there was a bus in Hampstead that was not a school bus. It was a motor coach. So Robert Moton's basketball team was traveling in style. We were traveling in a motor coach. It had a radio in it so we could listen to the radio. Had heat, air conditioning. So we were traveling in style. And whether you know it or not, physical education in Carroll County at that time had to pay for itself. The Board of Education didn't give us any money for athletics. So we had to make enough money to hire a bus. I had to make enough money to pay officials.
Okay. How did you make this money?
Well, we charged admission at the door to come to the games. We sold hot dogs and sodas, had a concession stand. We sold tickets to the Athletic Association. We had an Athletic Association. You become a member of the Athletic Association. I don't know what it cost, but you could get into home basketball games at a reduced fee. Then every Thursday we had recreation night. We played records and sold hot dogs and sodas. That's some of the ways we made money.
You were
telling me earlier about the extra seats on the bus.
Yes.
Tell us about that little money-making trick.
Well, in order to travel, of course, we had to get a bus. So if we had a 40-passenger bus, I carried 12 boys. Girls and boys teams rode together. So we had about 25 students on the bus. And so we sold extra tickets. If I had a 40-passenger bus, if I had 25, took 25, I had how many seats I could sell? 15 or something like that. I'm not good at mathematics. So I sold those 15 seats. Now, if we had a good crowd of people who wanted to buy tickets, so I would take 5 boys off the bus and put them in my car and sell those 5 seats and drive my car to wherever we were playing.
Okay. Do you have a question?
How did you feel about the election and the inauguration?
You talking about the one that we just had?
Yeah.
I'm still trying to come down from the euphoria. It was one of the greatest experiences that I've ever had. And I, like most of the people in the world, have a sense of optimism that I've never had before. And I just feel that everything's going to get so much better than it was. And you see, there was no need for a Robert Moton School because there weren't that many black kids in Carroll County going to high school. At that time, I think there were 7 high schools, 1 in each town. They bused black kids from all over Carroll County to come to Westminster. And Robert Moton High School never had 75 students, I don't think. Never had 75 high school students. So those 8 or 9 high schools in Carroll County, if they scattered them over, those kids, and there'd been 8 or 9 little black kids in a white high school scared to death, been no problem, and they wouldn't have known them of that. So the county spent a lot of money to send us to Robert Moton High School. See, they wouldn't have had to send me to Sykesville High School. I could have walked there. Instead, I walked the same distance to get on the bus and ride 18 to 20 miles.
Okay. Do you have a question? Okay. Was the school Bayou Whites?
Beg your pardon?
Oh.
If you were to pick, as a student, your best moment, your happiest moment as a young person,
Well,
narrow it down to 1
you
or
mean
2.
my happiest moment as a student?
As a student and as a teacher, because you were both.
Yeah, well, I've had a lot of them. They used to have a declamation contest when I was in high school where you had to get up and make a speech. You're supposed to make an oration. And I was on that contest. And the happiest moment in my life in high school, when I finished that speech, I had to make him sit down now. I didn't win, I didn't come close. But the happiest moment in my life was when it was over. Because I was standing up there scared to death. I don't even know what I was saying, but I was scared to death. So that was one of my happiest moments as a teacher. As a student. And I've had a lot of happy moments as a teacher, and I can't pinpoint them right now, but when you have a youngster that you're trying to get a point over to, I'm not talking about playing basketball or sports, but in English or history or something like that, and they don't understand, and all of a sudden you see their eyes light up, and they understand what you're talking about. That's one of the happiest moments you can have as a teacher.
Okay. If you had 3 wishes, what would you wish for?
Oh, Lord. I don't know. My first wish would be your age again. My second wish is that everything that Obama has wished for this country and for the world, he's able to achieve.
Third wish?
What?
You have three.
Oh, I don't know. My third wish is that the first two come true.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a
And,
pleasure
and
talking to you.
maybe I should have said my third wish is that I'll always be surrounded with children as lovely as you youngsters are here this afternoon. And you are a bunch of wonderful children.
Thank
And,
you.
and when I look at you, I'm not worried about the future because things are going to be all right because you're going to do all right.
I think so too. Thanks.
Thank you.